All right, and we're live. We got UFC Fight Night. The current fight is going to be um, Chase Sherman versus Waldo Cortez Acosta. Should be an interesting fight. I believe it's at heavyweight. Made some coffee right here. Unfortunately, Derrick Lewis was going to fight, but it looks like that fight got canceled. All right, we got the tail of the tape. Chase Sherman, 33. Waldo Cortez Acosta, 31. They're both 6'4". Chase Sherman is 256 pounds. Waldo's 259. They both have a 78-inch reach. Looks like this Waldo guy is undefeated. To me, this fight looks like it's going to be a short fight. All right, I got an advanced technique going on here. These are grapes that were going to go bad in like a day or two. So I picked them off of the vine, and I put them in the freezer. And when they're frozen, they get a little bit even sweeter. And they're absolutely delicious. It's like ice cream. All right. I got my snacks here. I got some peanuts left over from Five Guys. Oh, the fight's beginning. Okay. Both guys come out in an orthodox stance. Both guys exchanging jabs. Little leg kick from Acosta. Chase Sherman, it says, I think his record is 16-10. So double-digit losses against an undefeated fighter is kind of an interesting matchup here. I'll see if Sherman can use some of those losses as a good experience to be able to defeat an undefeated fighter. So far, they're exchanging some nice leg kicks. Whew. And Acosta with a serious jab. A jab that could knock most people out. Both heavyweights throwing with some serious heat. It's tough to be undefeated at heavyweight because anything could happen with their extremely strong punches. Some more nice leg kicks. You know, it's interesting. This card had some good fights at the lower weight classes. And you see a lot of the guys that are in like the really heavy or the really lightweight classes seem to get injured easier. I mean, in MMA, you're going to get injured pretty much regardless. But I wonder if the size of your body not being like normally proportionate lends itself to a higher injury rate. Costa going for some wild looping, swinging punches. This looks a little bit more like a street fight than it does a UFC fight. Although I will admit, with the amount of jabs that are being thrown, that is something less typical of a street fight. Acosta picks up the leg and goes in for a single leg takedown. Gets defended by Sherman. Sherman gets to the back body lock on Acosta after a interesting leg kicks kind of scramble. One thing that's always interesting in these fights is how people deal with the leg kicks. And generally, the defense for that is to go straight through to throw straight punches like ones and twos right down the middle. And you definitely see that being a theme of this fight. And man, Acosta has such a mean jab. Sherman's has a couple cuts by his eyes. Oh, and Sherman does a beautiful body lock takedown. Love to see it. I'm a big fan of the body lock takedown series. And Sherman ends the round with him being on top. I'm a big fan of the body lock series. I'm actually watching John Danaher's takedown instructional right now. And he's going over the body lock stuff. And it's really interesting to see because I have a takedown system. I teach law enforcement some jiu-jitsu moves so they could non-violently deal with people who are resisting arrest and to de-escalate situations more. Anyway, I have a takedown system that I teach to law enforcement where you can always stay standing and they always stay on the ground. And it relies heavily on different types of body locks that you could get to. It's such a reliable takedown. All right, second round, here we go. Both fighters come out in a similar way. It seems to me that Sherman's starting to fade a little bit. Costa seems to be landing a little bit more. Sherman has a sick tattoo on his back, though. Ooh, a couple big punches from Costa here. This might be it. Costa going wild, trying to finish this fight. Sherman trying to stay in it. Sherman clinches, hooks the leg. They separate. Costa wants to get right back to finishing this fight. It was close to being stopped there for a second. And there's a certain, how do I put this? Oh, a crazy overhand right from Costa. Oh, and another jab. Yikes. When a fighter's undefeated, there's a certain feeling like you don't know that you could lose. Like, you've never lost before. You don't know what it's like. Oh, and a couple big punches from Sherman that back Acosta back. And then when you've lost a bunch of times, it's like it looks like you're almost receding back into, oh, this is another fight where I lost. So a lot of times that like is a part of the dynamic of some of these fights, sort of like how you see Alexander Volkanovski. He's won so many fights in a row. He almost doesn't feel like he can lose. Oh man, Acosta really pouring on the strikes here. I don't know how much more Sherman can take. Sherman, man, trying to find a way to win, but it looks like the prophecy of this fight has been written already. That Acosta is just going to take over. And there's a certain mindset where you feel you can't lose in a way. And that partially comes with being undefeated. There was a long string of tournaments that I did at Purple Belt when I got my Purple Belt in Jiu-Jitsu. And I won like 13 tournaments in a row. And I was like, man, I just cannot lose. And that overconfidence actually ended up being my downfall. Oh, Acosta really pouring on the strikes here. But Sherman seems to survive. Got to give props to Sherman. Sherman claiming he got hit in the nuts, but the referee says, no, you didn't. Keep fighting. Sherman's dying for something in this fight. Oof. Acosta might tire himself out punching Sherman's face. I mean, Sherman's got a hell of a chin. This is ridiculous. Some brain damage for Sherman in this fight for sure, man. Oh. This has got to be some of the last punches here. I mean, Acosta just keeps on punching him in the face. There's no answer from Sherman. But Sherman refuses to go down. "25 seconds left. The referee's super close to stopping this. I mean, Sherman just refuses to accept defeat. And he might survive this round. 4 seconds, 3, 2, 1. Incredible heart from Sherman. Incredible. Oh my goodness, they're showing just some of the punches that Sherman took in this fight. Yikes. Acosta just is beating on him and beating on him and beating on him. I mean, Sherman's face, it doesn't have many cuts on it, but it's just all like red and swollen from being punched in the head so many times. I mean, maybe he has like a little cut under his eye, but it's pretty amazing. And I guess maybe on the side, the cut man did a great job, but I'm surprised his face doesn't look worse as far as like blood coming out of it. Oof. Sherman with a nice leg kick on Acosta. That seemed to have bothered Acosta's leg. And Sherman answering back with some punches of his own. Good. It's good to see. If Sherman wins this fight, I would be very impressed. But it would have silenced a lot of doubters, and he would have moved through hell to get it. And Sherman's still dangerous. He's not going to be put away easily. I wonder if Acosta's wondering, what do I have to do to finish this guy? Because Acosta's sort of thrown the kitchen sink at him, and he's still standing. Ooh, a couple powerful hooks from Acosta. This might be it here. Sherman wobbles. He's got the Bambi legs. Acosta seems a little bit tired. Both guys do. If this makes it to the end of 3 rounds, we got 2 minutes 48 seconds left in this third round. I'd be very impressed. Sherman pulling up his pants. A classic sign of let's get after it. Oh, and another huge overhand right from Acosta. I mean, the damage that Sherman has taken in this fight is just ridiculous. This is some serious head trauma. And Sherman throws another huge leg kick. Man. It looks like Acosta is feeling those leg kicks. Whenever he goes into the pocket, he's lifting his knee up to make sure that he's checking those kicks, but it's sort of ruining his stance. 1 minute left in this crazy fight. Oof. Sherman walks into another big overhand right. 18 seconds left in this fight. It looks like this one's going to go the distance. Wow. 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1, and time. Amazing. Amazing. I mean, you got to think Acosta won that fight, but man. you know. Crazy that Sherman took that much damage. All right, all of my zero viewers, make sure to sit tight. I'm going to just get some more coffee and put away my frozen grapes so they don't completely unfreeze. All right. What a shame about Anthony Rumble Johnson, too. They keep on, mentioning him and the fact that he passed away. Seemed like a really great guy. I mean, I never met him in person, but it's wild to see the blowback of how many people loved, respected, and now miss him. They got this new translator in the UFC, and man, it seems like he speaks every language, and he does a good job with his translator.
I felt very familiar to the situation. I mean, he came in with the leg kicks, but he prepared very well for the fight as well. I mean,
it looked like you were having a lot of fun out there. In the second and third round, you were throwing a lot of shots. Were you thinking at some point, what am I going to hit this guy with to get him out of there?
parecía que se estaba divirtiendo. Y el segundo y
looks like he speaks French or something. Anyway, it was interesting to see Sherman kind of utilize the body lock takedown, where the body lock takedown is interesting because I believe in it so much, but it's really hard to get to work at like a really high level. Like you never see any of these Dagestan wrestlers like Islam Makhachev or a Khabib or a super high level wrestler sort of get caught in it. And they sort of just avoid that situation from happening in the first place. So it works. And it's like it works up until a certain point where people just become so aware of the fact that it exists. But there's techniques like ukigoshi, which is referred to as a power twist, where if you're able to get into this into that kind of front body lock, there's an interesting way to take them down, where you like walk into their base, sort of like an Uchimata type throw, where you take one leg and you throw them in the air. So there are like more advanced versions of how to take people down with a body lock, but part of the problem is getting there on a higher level opponent, because to get to a effective body lock, you need to have double underhooks. And a superior wrestler just rarely gives up free double underhooks. They're advertising one of the next UFCs, and Yuri Prohaska versus Glover Teixeira. That should be an absolutely great one. But you know what is a good example of the body lock working really well? Robert Whitaker was able to take down Israel Adesanya. And Israel Adesanya, you know, he's number 2 ranked pound for pound fighter in the world. He certainly knows his way around some takedown defense. Defended a lot of takedowns and the ability to hold him down from some of the best grapplers in the world. But he's just not from that same like wrestling pedigree where he's just going to avoid the body lock from ever happening. And you see that in guys that are high level wrestlers. It works great to learn as like a self-defense move, which is why I have it included in my law enforcement instructional, because normal civilians are not used to this idea or this battle of like pummeling for underhooks, for dominance in a body lock type situation. But it's interesting, like there becomes this like idea of higher level theory or higher level understanding of certain moves. When it comes to takedowns, for example, you can do an Osotogari, which is just your basic leg trip. It's like the first technique taught in a lot of judo schools and one of the first takedowns you learn, if not the first, in jiu-jitsu as well. But if you understand Osotogari, you can counter it with Osoto Gaeshi, which is basically where you do the end Osotogari. It's like I'm only going to set up Osotogari in a way that I cannot be countered. So there becomes this like ranking order of this like understanding the double-edged nature of positions to such a degree that you would only set up the position correctly if you never allowed for any counters to be there in the first place. So I went down this rabbit hole for a while thinking like, I mean, what is real counter fighting then? Because I have been a counter fighter a lot in my striking career, but really counter fighting is almost relying upon your opponent being successful. So the better I got, the more I felt like relying on counter fighting wasn't as good of an idea, at least in a grappling sense, because you see some of the greatest strikers of all time still rely heavily on counter fighting, like a Anderson Silva or a Muhammad Ali. So, you know, it's a certain thing in skill level when you have the technique and then you have the counter to the technique and then you have the counter to the counter of the technique. And it's sort of like if you understand all of those, there becomes a point where like you're not going to get countered because you understand the double-edged nature of the position totally, and you would only set up the technique properly, leaving no room for counters. So I don't know. It's been something I've been working on and thinking about. And I don't have it ironed out exactly how I want to say that yet, but just something that has been on my mind. I would say also within jiu-jitsu, a lot of times you want to sort of take a lead and then you want to build off of that lead, you know? And same thing like in chess, you don't see a lot of times in world level slow chess games where you really have time to think. So much like sacrificing, where you sacrifice your queen or anything. What people do is they fight for the slightest bit of advantage out in the opening, and then they build upon that advantage throughout the rest of the match. And that's a much higher percentage way of winning rather than like crazy sacrificing of pieces um, and relying upon your opponent being dominant for you to win. On another note, I went to Five Guys and I took a lot of their peanuts and I put them in the to-go bag. Man, peanuts are so good. Such an underrated snack. I had another crazy thought that I might as well share with you. Since it seems to be just me here, is I friggin' love peanut butter. And I wonder if you got smooth peanut butter and then you got like a little bit of crunchy peanut butter, then you have really crunchy, extra crunchy peanut butter. But what if you just took peanuts and then you put a little bit of peanut butter on that? What would you call that? Let me know in the comments of what you would call peanuts with a little bit of peanut butter on it. Is it crunchy then? I don't know if it could either be if it could even be considered peanut butter, because it's so crunchy that it's mainly the peanuts. Give you a little insight of what's going on in my brain lately there. Anyway, man, I was really looking forward to this card because my good friend slash jiu-jitsu teacher slash idol, Rodolfo, was going to be fighting on this card. He's based out here in Orlando now. And he had to pull out with an injury. I've been going to physical therapy, and he's been there. So that sucks to see your friend injured or going through that. And then Derrick Lewis, who was the main part of this card, he pulled out with illness. And I'm not sure exactly what kind of illness, but that's unfortunate too. I'm a big Derrick Lewis fan, and I want to see him get back on the horse. He's been on the rough end of a couple decisions lately. Oh no, I dropped a peanut into the thing. Hey, Connor Kilmore. Connor says, did you hear about Joe in the UFC? Connor, no, I did not hear about Joe in the UFC. Can you please tell me what happened? Please let me know. I don't know much about these fighters, if I'm being honest with you, but I know Ian Cutelaba definitely likes to show off during the weigh-ins, and he has all of these different weigh-in antics, like dressing up in all green, like how you see in the thumbnail of this video. Different ways of trying to scare and intimidate his opponents and so on. All right, the tail of the tape. Kennedy, I don't know how to say his last name, is 30, and Ian Kuzilaba is 28. Wow, Kennedy's 6'5". It's Ian 6'1". Both weighing in at about 205 pounds. Kennedy has an 83-inch reach, and Ian Kuzilaba is a 75-inch reach. Holy crap! That's the third longest reach in all of the UFC, it says. I know John Jones got an 83.5-inch reach. I wonder who the other longest reach is. I wonder if it's Francis Ngannou. But man, an 83-inch reach is ridiculous. It's so hard to fight a guy like that. Connor Kilmore. I wish I knew what happened to Joe in the UFC. But I don't know. I mean, if you're referring to Joe Rogan only commentates on a couple cards a year, and they're generally only the big cards. You know, he doesn't waste his time in the UFC Apex with small cards like this. I got a peanut stuck in my throat. All right, and they're fighting. Let's see here. Looks like I was a second behind live, but they both come out. Ian Kutilaba is in the orthodox stance. Kennedy, let's say his name is in the southpaw stance. Kutilaba coming out very aggressive. A great combination between his striking and his wrestling. You know, classic dilemma there, where when the guy puts his hands up to defend the strikes that are coming in, he leaves the legs open and the body open for body locks, which you see Ian Kutilaba getting the body lock and taking him down with the body lock here. You know, it's interesting in talking about like different applications of grips in gi versus no gi jiu-jitsu, or no gi in general. It seems like in Kutilaba with a nice leg trip on the body lock takedown right into the mount. Classic Gracie self-defense 101. And again, not to say that that Kennedy is not skilled in wrestling, but man, that body lock is effective at many levels of the game. Only when you get to the very top, you sort of don't see it working as much. But also, if you go against a guy who has a Greco-Roman type style, that style is very conducive to those upper body clinch takedowns, you know? So there's levels to everything, of course. Kennedy seems to put Ian Kutilaba back in the half guard here. Ian Cutelaba, he's trying to make things exciting. It looks like he doesn't have an underhook here though in the half guard, and is sort of using the cage to his advantage. And it looks like he put himself back in close guard just to make sure this fight still stays on the ground. It's an interesting strategy. A lot of times you see guys utilizing the half guard and the close guard as a position to help keep someone down on the ground more so than even the dominant positions. Heisting is definitely a skill. Heisting is the skill of being able to get the fight back to your feet at any time. And it's definitely hard to heist out of a half guard situation where your legs are sort of trapped. There's ways to do it, of course, and then there's ways to do it from close guard. Ooh, a nice Haragoshi from Ian Cutelaba here into a true Keisagatame position. This is a really great dynamic position. There is some danger of Ian Cutelaba giving up his back here, but again, there's many levels to this. Many people would consider this just sort of to be a headlock. But if you really pull up on the position and know how to use it right, Ian Cutelaba looking to trap the arm in this Keisagatame situation. Oh, and ends up giving up his back. How unfortunate. That is part of the danger and the risk of this position. But if you know how to use it really well, it is a really demoralizing position that also doubles as a submission in itself. In my opinion, it's the only position that's a true position on the ground that doubles as a submission. Really interesting, dynamic kind of spot there. I have an instructional called Unpinnable where I go over how to get out of that situation. And it's an important escape to know because if you get caught there, it's really frustrating. The famous Dean Lister was tapped out for the first time in 17 years from this position, and it sort of revolutionized it in a catch wrestling versus jiu-jitsu kind of mindset. All right, and that concludes round one. An interesting round. All right, round two. Here we go. Kennedy really using his range here to be able to keep Ian Cutelaba at the end of his punches. For Ian Cutelaba to win here, he will have to better find how to wrestle like he did before, but he just seems to be fighting this round at Kennedy's range. Gets caught with a big knee here. Oof, and Ian Cutelaba knees Kennedy in the groin, but Kennedy says, I want to keep going. I think Kennedy feels that he's got some serious momentum here. Throws a nice 1-2. Ian Cutelaba looking to wrestle out of the situation. Another nice knee. Oh, Ian Cutelaba on deer legs. This might be it. This might be the end. And oof, that's it. Kennedy unloading some punches to Ian Cutelaba's face at the very end there. A couple beautiful flying knees. And that just about does it for Ian Cutelaba. All right, and that does it for that Derrick Lewis card. Much love and respect to all of you out there, and I hope you have a great night.